Hi, folks. It's Dr. Christine Sauer here with Sparkles for Better Mental Health. This show is all about personal growth. And today I'm extremely excited to have a special guest here, John Giordano. John has gone through an incredible life transformation from the stigma of childhood sexual abuse, homelessness, and a severe addiction to being a renowned addiction expert with 36 years of sobriety. He even started his own holistic treatment center with only $300, and it was worth a lot more after that. 45 million, is that right?
Yep.
You published 3 books. You're a consultant for South Beach Detox and a chaplain for the North Miami Police Department. Wow. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you.
I'm honored to have you. So I ask all my guests, how did you get to the place where you are now? Where did you start? What happened?
How did I get here? One step at a time.
Mhm.
I'm not even sure I'm here. Well, you know, it was a heck of a journey. You want me to tell you how I started and where I went?
Yeah, absolutely. We have time to hear
how much-
stories. I love the stories. You know, they're so
Okay.
important. People can
How much time do we
identify.
have?
We have about half hour, 45 minutes max.
Okay, so I'll make it real quick. Okay. I started off my family. I wrote a book. It's called The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up.
Mhm.
And that's my roadmap to success. So if it's okay with you, I just want to read something and then I'll go into my story.
Sure.
It's called The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up. Here is my roadmap for positive change. There is one thing in this world, one special lesson, one constant that has guided me through the turbulent waters of life. This infinite rule, which most people know, ignore, or simply do not follow their life lessons. That is, no matter the obstacles, the people that get in our way, or things that slow us down, follow this one simple rule. Never give up on your dreams, never let go of your passions, and especially never give up on yourself or a God of your understanding.
Wow.
I was blessed to become extremely successful, and I'd like to share my story with you. This is how my life was transformed and how I was saved from falling into the abyss of hell, and by following this one rule and learning how to have a life worth living. So that's my start off, and then I'll tell you about my life.
That is beautiful, but you didn't start that beautiful, I'm sure.
No. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And mine's still going, so I'm going to be
I just want to say, you're not at the end yet.
I'm going to be 76 in a week.
Good
So
for you.
I'm still going. I don't take medications. I don't take anything. I'm in great shape. I follow what I teach.
Lots of sparkles waiting for you, as I always say.
Okay, so when I was 8, my father was a heroin dealer. My family was like a mafia family. My uncle was a hitman. My other family members were doing nefarious things. At 8.5, I got molested by some kids in the neighborhood, some boys. And it was kind of confusing for me because part of me liked what they did and the other part just gave me shame and guilt, and it just drove me crazy for a while. And then at 9, I got molested by my babysitter. She was 14. And so I went through that roller coaster ride. I went, while my father was in jail, I went and joined some gangs. I was in a black gang, a Hispanic gang, Irish gang, Italian gang, all kinds of different gangs. And then eventually, I don't want to give the whole story, so I'll just give pieces of it. I went and I got into karate, and karate helped me to channel my anger and channel the way I was emotionally feeling. Also at 12, matter of fact, at 12, let me digress, at 12 years old, I had like an eating disorder. because kids used to call me Fat John, and I wasn't really overweight. I was just a chubby little kid. As kids grow, they get heavy and then thin. But anyway, I looked at that and I stopped eating, and I became anemic. And my mother got crazy when she went to the doctor with me. And they said, "What do you mean? I feed him. What do you mean he's anemic?" And then I went through that, and that passed. Then at 14 and a half, I joined karate class, and my life changed. I got out of the gangs. I started competing. I became a national karate champion, and also judo champion. And I also studied jujitsu. So then I found a girl. I got married. My uncle was, and what had happened was the caterer insulted my uncle at the wedding. So the next morning he killed him. So we had to go, my wife and I, my new wife and my new family had to leave to go back to Florida. So that was kind of like a nightmare. And then there's more about that, what happened in the book. So then as time went on, I started to, we moved to Florida, and what happened was the first drug I ever did was LSD. And I did that because my students, when I was teaching karate in Florida, they used to come to my class stoned. And what I used to say to them, "What are you doing?" So I used to exercise them until they threw up, and figured out to discourage them from coming to my class like that, but it didn't. And one day they said, "Well, why don't you see what it's like?" So one day a friend of mine came over, and he had this little bottle with clear liquid in it. And I said, "What's that?" He said, "LSD." So this was 1965. And it was pure lysergic acid. But what I didn't know, it was for 5 people. So I said, "Let me see the bottle." I took it, opened it up, and drank the whole thing. Well, I was gone for 4 days on this journey of the psychedelic trip. And then from there, I kept doing it because I felt my mind was getting expanded and doing all these different things. And then I went to pot, and then I went to pills, and then I tried opiates once. I didn't like it. I got sick. I never drank because I got nauseous when I drank. Fast forward to all the things that happened to me. Then what I wind up doing, and it was interesting because I was successful in almost everything I touched, even though I was using drugs and alcohol. Giving you an example, I did 8 plays in a theater performing arts and Jackie Gleason Theater on Miami Beach, Kabuki Theater. I put together, I wrote it, directed it, acted in it, did the marketing for it, and we had standing room only. So I did that. And then I also did, I threw a concert with James Brown for a grand opening of a flea market in Liberty City in Overtown. Now, Liberty City and Overtown in the Black community is where the riots went on in 1980, 81. And most people didn't want to go into the city. They were afraid. So what I did was I went around to all the churches and all the deacons, and I was singing and dancing in the churches and, and getting them to come over to support me in the flea market. Because what I did was I created a theme for the flea market. What I did was I went to the SBA people, Small Business booth in the flea market. Okay, I had to teach them how to run a business, how to buy wholesale, and things of that nature. So it was helping revitalize Liberty City and Overtown. Then I got an idea. I wanted to invite President Reagan to the flea market grand opening, and everybody laughed at me, of course. And so I sent a letter out, and I got a letter back 2 weeks later from the president's office. And he said, "Sorry that the president can't come do the scheduling, but we're going to send a representative." And they sent Carrie Meeks. Carrie Meeks happened to be the state representative, and then later became Senator Meeks. And of course, they check you out thoroughly before they come to you. And she saw what I was doing. She went to the Martin Luther King Foundation, and they presented me with the Martin Luther King Award on stage in front of 60,000 people.
Wow.
It was the wildest thing you ever seen in your entire life. Now, I was still using at the time, not as heavy, but I was still using. So there's things that I did going through. So as far as I was concerned, there was nothing wrong with me. But my family, there was things wrong with me, but I just didn't see it. So my family did an intervention on me, and I told you who my family was. So I'm wondering who's doing an intervention on them. And my mother said she'll never talk to me again. So I said, you know what? Let me go into treatment and have them leave me alone. And I had some cocaine in my sock. I went into the bathroom and did a couple of hits. And then I went into the treatment center. And I remember the therapist saying to me, oh, let me digress a little bit too. What I wind up doing, I used to do collection work for the smugglers. I used to sell drugs. Okay, so I became everything I didn't want to become. So I became everything my family was, which I always said I would never be, but that's what wound up happening. Anyway, so I went in there, and then they wanted me to share my most deepest and darkest secrets with the group. I said, if I do that, I have to kill you. So, it was just like, I said, what am I doing? I don't belong with these people. I wouldn't even get high with these people. So the bottom line is that I was just like everybody. But of course, when the drugs influence your brain and you don't realize that you're being influenced, you're in denial about what's going on because you're really working from a fog. You're not working from clarity. Once I started to clear up, I started to realize that, wow, I hurt myself, I hurt my family, and I started to get more clarity about what's going on.
How long did that take, John, from when you went into the treatment center
It took
cleared up?
About 3 weeks. Now I was really not detoxing. I was detoxing, but I wasn't. I was doing cocaine and smoking. Well, I wasn't smoking, but I was just doing cocaine at the time. So anyway, treatment is called a detox. They're not detoxing anybody, they're stabilizing them. Mm-hmm. To detox somebody is to detoxify them. I wanted to go home. It was like I went in December 4th, and it was around Christmas time. I wanted to go home for Christmas Eve. I said I want to see the kids. I don't want them to come here to see me in treatment. I was lying. I wanted to come home, so my friends would come give me Christmas cards with Coke in it, and I would get high. But they turned me down, and I got very crazy. And I don't know about anybody else, but I never just got angry. I got rageful. And it didn't just go away in 10 minutes or an hour. Sometimes it lasted for a whole day. And anyway, went running into my room, cursing, punching the door. And I remember my therapist said, hey, John, you ever pray on your knees? And I remember telling him, well, what are you, a joke? I went to Catholic school. I got calluses on my knees. So he says, no, for humility. I said, humility? You mean God doesn't hear me? How about if I'm in a closet? Would he hear me then? So he said, no, John, just think about that. And it stuck in my mind. And that's what therapy does sometimes. People just click in and they don't even realize that they're clicking into it. And anyway, I went to get down on my knee, and this may sound a little crazy to the audience. I couldn't get down on my knee. It wouldn't go down. So what I did was I remember it so clearly. I had to push my knee down. I pushed my second knee down. And for the first time, I prayed to whatever was out there to just get rid of this pain I had inside of me, this emptiness, this loneliness, this shame, this guilt. And my anger went away like it never was there. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but it never happened to me. So as sick as I really was, I tried to get it back. It wouldn't come back. So that was like one of my spiritual awakenings in treatment. Eventually, I got out of treatment. There's more that happened, but you're going to look at the book. Then I only went to the 9th grade. Excuse me. So I got divorced, and I wound up, my wife took everything. I gave her everything. She didn't take anything. And I wound up being homeless. Excuse me. I didn't have a car, I didn't have a house. A friend of mine owned a hotel. He gave me a room. Another friend of mine loaned me a bicycle. And then I had a big jar I used to put quarters in when I had quarters. My kids used to come and we all used to cry together. And that's how I started my journey. Excuse me. I got an idea about opening up a treatment center. It's my first treatment center. And I'm going to run through all that and make it real quick. I went in partners with my doctor and my therapist. And my therapist, he wasn't my partner, he worked for me. I raised $250,000. And the way I did that is the guy that owned the hotel was my friend. And I told him I had this doctor that was famous, and I did, but I didn't because I never spoke to him. It was my doctor, but I never told him about a treatment center. So I lied. And he says, well, if you got that doctor, how much money do you need? Now, what do I know about how much money I need? The only thing I know about treatment centers, I was in one. So I says, $250,000. He says, well, you got it if you can get him. Okay. So I got him. I walked into his office and I said, Jules, I got $250,000. Would you like to open up a treatment center? And he said, no, John, he says, I was just thinking about that. He was always a comedian. So we went partners. I didn't know it was unethical. I hired all the people from Mount Sinai that treated me. I gave them almost double their salaries. And we opened up the treatment center and we were very successful. But my therapist that I hired, I gave him twice what he was making. Didn't like the fact that he was working for his client. So anyway, long story short, he took the treatment center out from under me. And they said that my friend was stealing money, but he never had contact with the money or the checkbook. So it was a joke. So my friend said, they're stealing. So I said, no, they're in recovery. I got sober and I got stupid. I'm a street kid. I don't, But anyway, I walked in the doctor's office. He's like, are you stealing? And he put his head down. He said, yes. He had a sex addiction. Now, they were only 3 years clean. So, early in recovery, our behaviors don't leave us so quickly. And most often, most people have more than one addiction. So he was buying apartments for girls and buying hookers, and we couldn't make payroll. So that's how this all came about. So anyway, now I'm stuck because I can't leave because I just got my GED. I want to be a therapist. I got 300 hours of addiction training at the college. And now I needed 6,000 hours for supervised on-the-job training in order to apply for my certification. So I stuck it out for about 4 years, 6 years, I don't even remember. And I got my certification. Wow. And to make it short, instead of going to all the details, I left there. I went and my friend says, listen, I have another, they never paid me the percentage they were supposed to pay me because they gave me an outpatient program that had 3 clients. Mm. And they were supposed to pay me a percentage of what I was making. They never did. I only got a salary. Mm-hmm. So eventually I got a contract when I was leaving because I threatened to beat them up. And I was in recovery. I didn't want to do that, but I went into his office and said, I'm going to rearrange your face. Okay, if you don't give me my contract, because then I didn't care because I had my certification. I learned everything there was about a treatment center, how to run it. And he knew who my uncle was. All right. So he got scared and they gave me a contract. And then I quit 3 months later. They gave me $80,000 and they made millions. So I had another addiction called a spending addiction. And that money went real quick. Yeah. Then my friend said to me, hey, John, I have a guy that wants to open up a treatment center. He says, how much money do you need? I said, I said $250,000. I don't know. I kept saying I don't know why, but I did. So he said to me, okay, make a business plan. I said, I don't know how to make a business plan. So he says, I'll do it for you. So he made a business plan. I went up to meet the guy in West Palm Beach and I forgot the business plan. So now I'm 2 minutes away from the guy. I can't go home. I got to go forward. So I went forward and I explained to the guy, sorry, man, I forgot the business plan. He said, I don't care. Here's a napkin. Tell me where you need the money and what's going on. So I did. So he gave me the money and we opened up a treatment center. It was very successful, but the problem was I made the same mistake the second time. I never had a lawyer. I never read what I was signing. Excuse me. So what happened was, one day I walked in and he said, I'm firing you. I said, excuse me, I'm your partner. You can't fire me. Contract. He didn't like
Just a second, some
700.
phrasing here.
He didn't like the fact that I spent $700 on phone, $70,000 business. So I said, you can't fire me. And he said, well, you're fired. So what I did was I told him I was going to throw him through a window. And then my recovery kicked in. And the guy that was the clinical director was my sponsor. And I took him away from his job, who was making $29,000 a year, gave him $50,000 a year. He just bought a house. He said, John, I can't leave. So I said, but you don't know how to run this business. He says, we have another one. I can't leave. So I didn't know. Later on, I found out he was a corporate raider. You know, he would get somebody that knew what they were doing, build a business up, and then take it out from under them. So I'm sitting in the parking lot with my little box with all my stuff, starting to cry. I can't believe that this happened again to me. Then I wound up being the clinical director for indigent facility, 55-bed, HIV clients, dual diagnosed clients. That means people that have addiction and mental health issues. And it was an old therapeutic community. There's a kind that put you in the middle of the room, they break you down, and then they build you back up. I said, this doesn't make sense. I don't know about anybody else. I didn't need help breaking myself down. I did a good enough job on my own. And then they would feed him chocolate cakes and ice cream and all this stuff at lunchtime. And then the people would act out an hour, half hour later. Then we would put them on a bench, put a sign around their neck. I said, this is ridiculous. So I quit. Then a lady I was going out with at the time said, why don't you open up your own treatment center? I said, no. I had enough for treatment centers. I only had $300 in the bank. So I said, okay. So I went over to my friend who owned this little building next to his office, 750 square foot building. I said, how much, Bill? How much would it be for the rent? He says, how much do you have? I said, well, I only have $300. He said, tell you what, get it going for a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, and then pay me $300 a month. So that's what I did. And it was only me working there. Then my friend who worked with me at the Better Way, which was the indigent program, quit there and came with me. I told him I'd give you 50% of the business. Well, I didn't have much business. He said, well, let me see the books. I said, what books? I don't have any books. He said, well, how do you know who pays you? Well, they give me money, I put it in my pocket. Don't worry, they'll pay. He laughed. He said, that's crazy. So he took over the business part. And then his son got involved, who was an internet genius. And what wound up happening, eventually, we started about 18 years later, and we had creditors chasing us. We couldn't make payroll sometimes. It was crazy. But we still gave treatment to people that didn't have any money, which was even more crazy, but we wanted to help everybody. We never was after the money. It was after helping God's kids. And so what wound up happening is that I got connected with a Dr. Deborah Mash. She was a neuromolecular scientist from the University of Miami School of Medicine. She was the head of the brain bank and the head of the Alzheimer's Foundation. And she was doing this experimental drug called Ibogaine. And I called her up. They were looking for people to volunteer. So I called her up. He said, look, I'm too busy for this. And she said, I'm sorry. I already have enough people and hung up. Okay, 6 months later, I get a phone call. It was her. And she said, look, everywhere I go, your name pops up. Because you see, I was doing holistic approaches to addiction. Okay, I was giving them nutrients. I was checking out if they have any allergy. I was doing all kinds of different things that nobody was doing.
It probably was working better than the usual approach, was it?
Right. And, and I was getting a hell of a reputation. So we got together, and then I was getting a lot of clients from her, and then we used to send them to St. Kitts. And because it was a Schedule I drug, you can't do it here in the States. Ibogaine is a bush from West Africa that was done by the Weenie tribe. They utilized it for a rite of passage, and it was a partial psychedelic. But it detoxes people in 24 hours from opiates, from methadone, from alcohol. It's like wild. And not only that, they come out and they don't have any cravings.
Wow.
So I work with Dr. Metz. I still work with her. So it's over 20 something years now. And that's how it helped me to build the treatment center, along with my partners, Jerry and Gerald, who were instrumental, because it's always a team. It's never one person that builds anything. And so we had this team together. I had the greatest staff in the world. Well, we wind up having 7 buildings and 147 employees. And we sold it in 2012 for $45 million.
Wow, congratulations.
Now, if you ever would have told me that, I probably would have punched you in the face thinking that you're making fun of me. But this is what happened. So I still do God's work. I still write books. I lecture all over the world. I'm currently part of a team of researchers, scientists, clinicians from around 15 universities.
Mhm.
I'm currently in now 79 medical and scientific peer-reviewed journals. I lecture all over the world. I've lectured to over 100 countries already. I lecture internationally. I've been in Budapest. I've been in Taipei and Chicago, Baltimore. And then COVID hit. Now we do it online. And that's where I am today.
Wow, John, let me ask you a question. You had an amazing success. You're obviously an extremely smart person that got derailed by the way you were born and the way life went. What do you think was the main reason in the end you turned out so successful?
Well, the main reason was I just kept doing the work, and I felt that I was helping God's kids. Because you see, I was very selfish and self-centered. Most addicts are. And to me, it was more about giving back than taking. And by putting one foot in front of the other and never, ever saying that I can't approve of what I'm doing. So I was always, we did at my treatment center, and we had a reputation that was unbelievable. We were packed. It was crazy how incredible it was. Nobody, even to this day, did the kind of treatment we did. Some of the things we did was neurofeedback, biofeedback, acupuncture.
You're breaking up a little bit. Let's go back when the holistic kind of treatment, because Zoom was breaking up. It's still broken. It's
Okay.
still stopped.
Hear me?
Let's take a little break and we'll wait until the internet on your side comes back through. Come on. Sometimes it helps to take the video off and put it back on. Let's try that. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, the kind of treatment we did was neurofeedback, biofeedback. We did light and sound therapies. We checked people for allergies, because certain allergies can cause depression. We also did heavy metal testing, because that also can cause disruption in neurotransmission. We did gene testing, because I work with a Dr. Ken Blum, He's the geneticist that found the addiction gene. So we found out if you have a mild, moderate, or severe propensity for addiction. Now, just because you have that gene doesn't mean that you're going to be an addict, because such thing as epigenetics. Epigenetics means the social environment can change the gene expression.
Right.
We did amino acid therapy. We did 15 studies, double-blind studies. We showed how this amino acid compound upregulated dopamine, which is and serotonin, which is the feel-good drugs that we manufacture naturally. We also treated the microbiome or microbiota, your gut, your flora in your gut, because that's where 60 to 90% of serotonin and dopamine is manufactured, and it goes up your vagus nerve into your brain and deposits the dopamine and serotonin. Most people don't realize this, that a lot of inflammation, a lot of autoimmune diseases come from your gut, which is now being called the second brain. I did this 20 years ago.
Wow, you're a real pioneer in brain health, really, as it relates to addiction.
Right. And then we did hyperbaric medicine. That's
Yes.
oxygen under pressure, which originally was used for the bends, where people would go down into the ocean and have nitric oxide in their blood. They would have to go into a chamber and rebalance their blood so they wouldn't get the bends. All right. But it was also used for wound healing. And now they found out it was for TBI cases, traumatic brain injury cases. Well, drugs and alcohol damage the brain.
Yeah.
There's such a thing called PAWS, post-acute withdrawal syndrome. And you ask most doctors what do you do for that, they don't know, they say time. But we knew. What we did is we used oxygen under pressure to help heal the brain. So we did that also. We did we gave them also different nutrients. We did micronutrient testing to see where they were deficient. We found people that 85% of the people had heavy metal toxicity. And heavy metals, okay, when you have an overabundance, mimics bipolar disorder and attention deficit disorder. So instead of throwing medication at them, we wanted to see what the core issue was and what's driving it. Then we checked for hypoglycemia, because a lot of alcoholics have sugar problems, because alcohol, as you know, is fermentation and from sugar. Then, well, we did so much stuff. I mean, it's
Awesome.
We checked for all kinds of different things,
Now, let me ask you, you did all those things, and I'm affiliated with Dr. Daniel Amen. You certainly heard of him.
I know Dr. Amen, yes.
Yeah. And did you ever work with him too?
No, well, I worked with Dr. Harch. Now, Dr. Harch worked with Dr. Amen.
Okay.
And Dr. Harch and Dr. Williamson, they're my friends also, and who I work with, are the ones that went to the Senate and got them to approve wound healing for diabetics in the VA.
Yeah.
They're pioneers. I am so blessed. I work with the pioneers in addiction and mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that I met, Dr. Mark Gold, who wrote the book 1-800-COCAINE.
Yeah.
He was the head psychiatrist for Chance up in Gainesville. He was on the president's board in Washington for addiction. I work with Dr. Blum, the geneticist. I work with Dr. Mash. I work with all these different scientists and researchers. I'm friends with them, and I'm also, believe it or not, this is so funny, I'm on an editorial board for a journal. I mean, I only went to really the 9th grade. I got a GED, but I got a bunch of certifications.
John, the amount of education you finished is never proportional to your IQ. And I think my dear husband that I'm married to now hasn't finished grade 9. He can't read or write. He's the smartest man I know. Sometimes the school systems, the circumstances just fail the people.
Right.
I was fortunate it didn't fail me, but many people got failed, and that doesn't make them worse or in any way inferior. And I totally believe that. Now, what I noticed when you were talking about your story, I think you don't credit yourself enough for your social intelligence. You seem to be very good at making connections with people and actually getting them to buy into your ideas and helping you help others.
Well, you know why? I speak from my heart, not
Yeah.
from my head.
Right.
I don't have a hidden agenda. See, most people are afraid. Well, that's for my karate also. I'm a grandmaster in the martial arts. I'm in the Black Belt Hall of Fame. I just got put in another Hall of Fame, an international Hall of Fame.
Wow.
I'm a 5-time or 10-time national karate champion. All this kind of stuff. God blessed me with a lot of gifts. And finally, I'm applying those gifts to helping people. And, what I write in the book and I show people, no matter what kind of family you come from, no matter what your education. See, when I went to school, I was going to get licensure. So I went to college to get a mental health license. I opened up the book. I looked when the book was printed. It was 7 years old. It's already outdated. I said, by the time I leave college, it's going to be antiquated. Why am I doing this? Plus, I'll have debt. So I says, I'm going to do, I have a master's in moral linguistic program. I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm a criminal justice specialist. I'm a mitigation specialist. I'm also an expert witness for the feds and for the state. I mean, I went a different route. And then with all the medical journals, and now they gave me an honorary doctorate degree from Sinai University for my work in the communities. I went a different route. Yeah. I'm not against college, but when I look at college, it's more of a business today than actually a learning place, unless you have a direction like a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever. To me, you're wasting your time because for the simple reason, 95% of what you learn in college, you don't even use.
I totally agree. I actually tell young people, think twice before you enroll in college and throw your money out of the window unless you really want to have a specialized degree where you need it. Because otherwise you can learn much more on the net with books, with talking to people like yourself that are in the forefront of science. Now, let me ask you, you were enormously successful financially and in business, and you are highly educated, and hats off for that. How did your personal life pan out?
My personal life was a nightmare before I was in treatment. I'm married 4 times. Mm. My father told me, keep doing it till you get it right, but
that's an attitude. Okay.
Okay. So what happened was I got married while I was in recovery, but I was still new in recovery, and my choices weren't the greatest, and I still had some old behaviors. But what happened was the woman that I was married to was also in recovery, but she pushed me to go get a degree in this and go get a certification in that. But meanwhile, she had severe OCD, and we just didn't get along. And the bottom line is that the woman I'm with today, the most incredible human being I've ever met. We're together we're 27 years together. When I first met her, she was in my treatment center. I didn't even know. My first treatment center, the hospital program I was part of. And she always had a crush on me, but I didn't never pay attention to the clients that way. And as time went on, we kept running into each other, and she was in school being an intern, and I was running a group, and she came into my group as an intern, and she was chewing gum. I said, excuse me, ma'am, stop chewing the gum, spit that out, and sit down. So that's how we first met. So my son happened to cause a lot of problems in school and was with me for the day. So when I got out of group, he says, hey, Dad, that girl really likes you. I says, oh, okay. So I handed her my card. I said, listen, if you ever want to be an intern in my program, I had another program, give me a call. So 2 weeks later, she gave me a call. And I says, she says, you remember me? And I says, oh, yeah. I says, you want to be an intern? She says, no, I want to go out with you. So he says, oh, okay. So that was how we started off. 3 months later, I had this treatment center with the $300 thing, and we were struggling really bad. And we needed to grow, and I couldn't grow because I didn't have any money. So I saw her, she had a car, a brand new car, and the kids were wrecking the car. So I told her, I said, look, sell the car, give me the money, and I'll buy your car 10 times better one day. So that's what she did.
Wow.
She sold the car, gave me $20,000, and I don't know, about 7 years later, I bought her a Bentley.
Wow.
So that's that story.
What a story. John, let me ask you, do you believe in fate and destiny?
I believe we make our own destiny. And I believe if you're doing God's work, whatever happens is supposed to happen.
Mm.
One of the podcasters asked me once, what would you change in your life if you had to change something? I said, absolutely nothing. Because everything that happened to me brought me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything that you would tell your young John? Say you would talk to yourself when you're 20?
Say that again?
If you could talk to your young self, say at 20, what would you tell John then?
Same thing I tell my son that doesn't listen. You know what I'm saying, right?
I hear you. You all have to make your own mistakes.
Absolutely. Listen, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear.
That's so true.
So not until then.
That reminds me of my kids. I didn't listen either. But they turned out just right.
No matter what I say, it's oh no, you're I went, okay.
Love that. John, you're so authentic. I really love that. So your life is not over. What is going on with John for the rest
Oh,
of
I'm starting on a new journey now. I found two things that are incredible. One thing I found was, are you familiar with the atlas, what that is?
What?
Part of our body, it's called the atlas.
Oh, here. Yeah, sure.
Okay, the atlas is the part that holds up your head. It's a floating bone. That's the
Yeah.
top of your vertebrae. So I met this doctor through a friend of mine. And the guy said he was a chiropractor. You can give it a pain. I said, look, chiropractors are good. Some are not. He said, no, he doesn't even touch her. I said, oh, he's a magician. I got cute with him. He said, no, John, you got to go. I said, okay. I was always open-minded. So I went there, and I have stenosis in my back. So that's where the narrow of the spine, where the nerves go through, okay? And a lot of pain in my back from judo, from karate, and in my neck. So I went there, he did some tests, he took an x-ray. I came back, gave him the CD, he made some calculations, put it in his computer, and he has this machine. You lay on a table, and this little bar goes near your neck, and it sends a frequency to your atlas, and it brings it back into alignment of its genetic predisposition. Now, I had one leg shorter than the other, so he tells my wife, come around the end of the table, now look at his feet, they were even. I get off the table, I have no more pain. It was the most incredible thing I've ever experienced.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm looking at it, well, I've been helping him, but what he didn't look at, he's only looking at it to help chiropractors and chiropractor schools. I said, you're missing a boat. He said, what do you mean? I said, let me explain to you about addiction. People, whether they're addicts or not, get stuck on Oxycontin, oxycodone, because they have injuries, all right? They want to get off of these pills. They go to detox, we get it off, we get them off, they come back out, they still have the pain. We tell them to do yoga and stretching, which helps, okay, but they still have the pain. And eventually they wind up going back on the opiates. So this takes care of the pain, like I've been watching it do.
You don't need the
Relapse
oxycontin
rates are going to
anymore.
be incredible. So now I'm doing a paper on it. We have our team is doing, Dr. Blum and the team are going to do a peer-reviewed journal on this.
Awesome.
And I want to present it to NIDA, or NIH, National Institute of Health, and show them the benefit of this. And here's the backup stuff. Now, I sent 15 people there, and 15 people come back and say, what is this? Their pain's gone.
Wow.
So now I found another thing. Are you familiar with ketamine?
Yes.
Okay. My wife's is bipolar disorder. She suffers. She's been on medication for 43 years. she's a completely different woman. And we're titrating her off medication. And I've seen a bunch of people the same way. It's when done properly in a proper setting, unbelievable.
John, what I really love about you, you're open to all avenues that help people heal. You're not only one dimensional like conventional medicine often is in North America. And I truly love that. Congratulations to your achievements. I just wanted to tell you that it is amazing. And I hope you live long and do more of those things. I've heard of all those things. And you're the right advocate to bring it to the higher channel. So maybe somebody in the system accepts them.
Well, you got to understand the pharmaceutical companies, we're walking cash registers for them.
I know.
Anything that cures anything, they look to destroy.
Absolutely. And the agroceutical industry, that's what I call them, agroceutical.
Yeah.
First, they give you junk food, so you get sick, and then they give you pills to keep you sick.
Right. And then they give you pills. If you get constipated from those pills, they get you not constipated.
They make you miserable. And then they make you even sicker. You need more pills.
All the things that I learned, like I said, my blood pressure was a little high. So now I learned over the years how to take it down. My diet wasn't good. I got cancer in my throat. And what that was from was HPV. All right. What happened? I caught COVID. I got rid of that in 2.5 days because my doctor was an alternative doctor.
Right.
Ivermectin. Don't use ivermectin. Baloney.
Great stuff. In Canada, you lose your license as a doctor if you prescribe it. Isn't that ridiculous?
Yes, they're stupid. And then we use monoclonal antibodies and ivermectin. And then I had a steroid and antibiotic on.
Well, there's an excellent FLCC protocol that will work, but it's not generally accepted because it's cheap.
Right. The reason I got what happened was my immune system went down from the COVID, and HPV, is a virus, stays in your body for forever. So it had to change back. So I changed my whole diet around. My cholesterol was 212. It went down to 166 with the different nutrients that I take and the different diet that I'm doing. My A1C was 6.1. Now it's 5.5. And my blood work is perfect.
How is your omega-3/6 ratio?
What?
You don't know your omega-3/6 ratio? Oh, I have to send you my blog post about it. It's more important than cholesterol. I'll send you that. You want to know about that.
Well, what is it? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Omega-3/6 fatty acids ratio in your blood.
Omega-3s, of course, that's what I take.
No, you have to, the index is important, the relationship.
That's
and you
right.
can measure that in the blood and it should be more than 8.
Right.
I'll give you some information. It's very
whatever you got.
Good science behind it. I love that. Now, John, to wrap this whole thing up, if somebody says, wow, that man is awesome, I want to contact John, I want to buy his book, where can they do it? Where can they find it?
They can get the book on Amazon. I got a few books on there. How to Beat Your Addictions and Live a Quality Life. I have one that I'm with a bunch of researchers and scientists about the 12-step book and the neurobiology of the 12 steps. And then I have the kid from the South Bronx who never gave up. They go to my website, John, the initial J, Giordano.com.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to share
Amazon.
under the video.
Amazon has the books, so,
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll share your website and your name, of course, under the video, as I usually do in the podcast notes. And I'll put it on my website and I'll put your book right underneath so they can click on it and buy it.
All righty.
It is so worth doing and reading your whole story. It's inspirational, John. You're an example of how somebody can whip themselves out of nothing and never give up and be an example, a role model for others. Thank you so much.
And I'm still going.
Absolutely. Go long.
Still going.
Oh,
it's hard to hit I learned something. It's hard to hit a moving target. So you got to keep moving.
And once you hit the 100, you're pretty safe because the statistics say hardly anybody dies that's older than 100. Most people die. I always laugh when people are afraid of statistics and they're dying from COVID. I say, do you go to bed at night? They say, yeah. I said, don't you know? Most people die in bed. How can you go to bed? It's a dangerous place, statistically showing. People die in bed all the time. Well, it's sarcastic, but it just shows.
That's people's fears.
Yeah, statistics can be misinterpreted in any way, and
the statistics and somebody's thoughts. And I learned about research. You can twist research different ways if you want to.
Mm-hmm. I got paid to do that when I was in medical school. Our boss, that I did my ex-husband's dissertation, and he told us what the outcome was supposed to be. And we had 2 small children. We needed the job. The outcome was what he wanted. It wasn't real, but it was what he wanted. Still peer-reviewed study out there. So I say that as an example. There's a lot.
That's what the pharmaceutical companies, they pay these doctors money and they twist things around.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not ethical, but it's done all the time because they don't want to lose their job.
That's right.
Okay, that said, thank you so much. You're a very amazing person. Keep on going, and I hope to hear from you again.
Thank you so much for having me on, and I hope we helped at least one person.
I think we will help more than that. I intend to spread it far and wide as much as I can. And I know people want to hear that story because anybody can do anything if they really want to put one foot in front of the other and do the work. You've done it. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
Take care. And that's the end of Sparkles for Better Mental Health. And make sure to tune in for the next episode. Bye-bye.